Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, September 27th, Maplewood City Council meeting. No one watching can see, but we have a room full because we have two promotions tonight, which always is an exciting time for the council. So welcome, everyone. We also have representatives from the League of Women Voters. I always start off council meetings with some type of a note about what's happening in our community. And I wanted to let you all know that our own representative from Maplewood, Peter Fisher, has been selected by the League of Minnesota Cities as one of the legislators of distinction for 2021. And for those people who may not be aware, Representative Fisher was pretty instrumental in working with the wastewater and stormwater problems and water gremlin and the issues that came from that up in White Bear. And as far as Maplewood is concerned, he was absolutely instrumental in securing a legislative change that permits a sales tax exemption for construction materials for our brand new fire station, which is saving the city about $500,000. So I was very pleased to see that Representative Fisher's hard work is being recognized, and he is now a legislator of distinction for 2021. Also tonight, shifting gears a little bit, it's fall. The leaves are starting to change, and we have another cleanup that I've asked Sean Finwall on staff here if she would step up to the dais and remind everyone about what's going to be happening in October. There'll be more information on our website about it, but I just wanted to make sure that we get that information out there so that people can plan. So good evening, Ms. Finwall, and thank you for addressing us tonight.
And members of the council. Yes, thanks for this opportunity to update you on our fall cleanup campaign. So this is something that we started after the city organized its trash hauling. We used to have two cleanup events, one in the spring and one in the fall, that were both drop-off at Aldrich Arena. So now that we work with our contracted hauler, Republic Services, we offer that bulky item collection at a reduced price throughout the month of October. Of course, they normally do bulky item collection throughout the year, but in October it's a reduced rate. And under the current contract, it's a 20% reduction. So people can call Republic Services directly to schedule that bulky item collection for the first 4 weeks in October. And that number is 651-455-8634. So then there's a couple other components to our fall cleanup campaign.
Can I just add one point to that? The beauty of that is that you don't have to get a truck and haul it anywhere. All you have to do is get it outside on the day that your trash is picked up, and Republic will come and pick it up. So it's a great opportunity. So.
Yes, very convenient. Of course, we did see in the spring a record number of residents trying to get rid of bulky items at our cleanup event. Unfortunately, we had to end up turning some people away, so we really want people to take advantage of this opportunity as well. So then the second item that we're offering is we're partnering with Ramsey County this year for free mattress and box spring collection. So up to 4 box spring or mattresses per household. And they are working with Second Chance Recycling. It's actually a pilot project that they're undertaking to see how this might work curbside. They did offer this at a few spring cleanups, I know in Roseville for sure. So to schedule the free mattress collection, don't call Republic Services on that because it'll be that usual bulky item charge. But Second Chance Recycling, you would call directly at 612-332-0664 and then extension 6. And then they'll call you back and schedule that collection throughout the month of October. And then finally, I wanted to announce our free Maplewood resident shredding event. What we did find at our spring cleanup was there were so many people coming to get rid of their bulky items that the poor people that had a few bags of shredding weren't able to get in. So we thought we should separate the events, and we're hosting that at Aldrich Arena on Saturday, and that is October 9th from 9 until noon. And we'll be working with Shred and Go. They'll have their confidential trucks, on-site trucks, shredding the materials. And residents can bring up to 6 boxes of shredding, no more than 30 pounds each. And then that also falls on the same dates as the household hazardous waste collection that Ramsey County puts on in Maplewood. It's the satellite site at Aldrich Arena every Friday and Saturday throughout October for household hazardous waste. So come on down on October 9th and you can get rid of your shredding and your household hazardous waste. And more information can be found at www.maplewoodmn.gov/cleanups.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Ms. Finwall. Now, what I'd like to do is call up Lucas and Andrew Duga tonight. They have agreed, their father is being promoted tonight. They have agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, Lucas and Andrew. We really appreciate your help tonight, okay? So everyone, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Lucas and Andrew, do you want to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ask your dad to show you the next council minutes from tonight because your names are going to be in there, okay? Thank you for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We appreciate it. City Clerk Sint, would you please do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Juniman?
Here.
Councilmember Knutson?
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio?
Here.
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Mayor Abrams?
Here. Thank you. Council members, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Juniman, seconded by Knutson. The motion to approve the agenda is, are there any additions or any further discussion? Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one little item about to Zoom or not to Zoom. That is the question.
Okay. Any other additions or discussion? Okay, then in terms of the motion to approve the agenda, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Moving on to approval of the minutes. First, we have the September 13th, 2021 City Council Workshop Meeting Minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion approval?
Second.
Motion by Cave, second by Juniman. The motion to approve the September 13th, 2021 City Council Workshop Meeting Minutes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Next, we have the September 13th, 2021 City Council Meeting Minutes. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the September 13th, 2021 City Council Meeting Minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to administrative presentations, council calendar update. City Manager Coleman.
The City Council. The council calendar is just meant to give a snapshot of the upcoming meetings, and I would remind everyone that we have a staff retreat with the council on October 7th at the Wakefield Park Building, and that will be all day from 8 to 4:30. And you have some homework assignments before you come. So you've got a survey from Mr. Rapp and another assessment that is needed for me to do some work on that day. On October 11th, we will have continued commissioner interviews. We will be interviewing for positions on the ENR, or the Environmental Natural Resource Group, and the HPC, Historic Preservation Commission. And then at the council meeting on the 11th, we'll actually formally make the appointments from the interviews that we had this evening for the Design Review Board and the Park and Rec Commission. Also, looking at some of the things that we have been working on behalf of the City Council, we have the parking space requirement review I believe that's getting wrapped up. We did hear about the parking changes for the area around the mall, the North End Study area. We also you had a report on the Friday FYI about using goats to remove buckthorn, and there's a really cute picture I put in there of little goats playing and eating things that we don't want in our parks. And I'd like to just acknowledge Audra Robbins for her creativity in partnering with the Great River Greening Group to explore the use of goats as part of our restoration project in Gibbs Prairie Preserve. And we do believe that we're going to be able to utilize some Outdoor Heritage Fund grant monies to help us pay for that. So thank you, Audra, for looking into that for us on our behalf. That will save us some substantial money. And then we also need to get a report back to you on the review of garbage recycling carts, the screenage and storage ordinance, what it says, and looking at what other communities do, as well as talking about a educational campaign to let people know what is expected of them. We do get quite a bit of complaints about people storing them inappropriately. And with that, Mayor, I don't have anything else to add unless you have some items that you would like staff to look into on your behalf.
Okay, council members, is there anything else that you would like to raise? Okay, then moving on to council presentation. Council member Juniman, Zooming. We're going to talk about Zooming.
Well, as you know, Mayor, and I think some of the others of you have also had this experience, that some of the outside committees that we are on to represent the city, some of them are still via Zoom. Some of them will come back in and then they're back to Zoom. It's all very confusing. And so I'm wondering if we could get our city attorney possibly and other staff if necessary, and possibly even talk to the League of Minnesota Cities about just how does this law apply to everybody. Because, you know, once you declared that we no longer had an emergency, we sort of had to come back in, and with it, all of our commissions. And we can have this discussion some other time because it takes time, but I'm confused. The one that's really confusing me is the county, because they're the ones that have come in and then they're back to Zoom, and then they call a meeting that you're going to be in person, and the day before they tell you you're going to Zoom, and you need a program to follow along. So I don't know how it applies and why some groups do what they do and some others don't. And so maybe a little research, but also a little background on who and how is interpreting this law for us. And I think after that, maybe we could bring it to the next step. I'm wondering if we are behind the times in insisting that all of our committees, or commissions rather, be in person for lots of reasons, whether you're talking about people who are ill, if you're talking about, you know, the debate on how long we're going to really be in a pandemic, depending on how you define it, and who is at risk and who isn't, and then the experiences that Bill and I had with the Parks Task Force and the the Nature Center Task Force. We had several people on each of those task forces say they could never have participated if they had to throw in commuting time. So are we eliminating a whole piece of our population in participating in our commissions by not looking into this? So we got a lot of reasons to look into it.
You raised some very good questions. I would suggest that we add that as number 4, because this obviously is going to take some staff research, some research with Mr. Beatty, and we'll add that on.
Okay.
Council members, your thoughts? Do we have some consensus on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Any clarity helps.
Zoom, let's call it Zoom or not to Zoom. Zoom or not to Zoom. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
There you go. All right, now we get to the part that everyone out there has been waiting for. We get to the swearing-in ceremony, and the first person we have is Police Lieutenant Michael Duga. Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Mayor, Council, and City Manager, good evening, and again, thank you for your continued support. It's a very exciting night tonight for Maplewood Public Safety. We're swearing in Maplewood Police Lieutenant Michael Dugas and Fire Captain Brad Davison, so we're really excited for tonight to happen. If I could have Lieutenant Mike Dugas step up. Mayor and Council, this is Lieutenant Mike Dugas, otherwise known as badge number 299. Mike is being promoted from a traditional process to replace the upcoming retirement of Lieutenant Helly. Mike grew up locally in St. Paul and in the Roseville area. He started his public safety career in fire, EMS. However, after 5 years, his passion changed to law enforcement. In 2002, Mike started his career in law enforcement with the Maplewood Police Department as a police officer and a paramedic. Mike holds a bachelor's degree in police science as well as a master's degree in public safety administration. During his 20-year career, Mike's been busy. Mike has been a field training officer, a drug recognition expert, a member and supervisor of the training unit, and he served on the Ramsey County SWAT team as a team leader for over 10 years. In 2009, Mike was promoted to police sergeant, where he helped to develop the EMR program, the Embedded Social Worker Initiative, and the Mental Health Outreach Team. Tonight, Mike will have his badge pinned on his uniform by his family. That badge weighs only 4 ounces. When we hire new officers, I sit down and talk to them about the real weight of the badge. I tell them about how that weight will never be known to those who do not wear the badge, and how that weight cannot be measured on a scale, yet it still takes a giant toll. I tell them that when the weight of the badge gets too heavy, they need to lean on each other for support so that we can lessen the weight together. When I think about Mike and what his priorities have been in his time here, I can't help but reflect on what he's done for officers for their mental and physical well-being. Mike has been absolutely instrumental in getting officers mental health check-ins to help remove the stigma that can often accompany that. Mike has been one of our strongest advocates for officer safety and for officer well-being as well. Mike understands the weight of the badge, and he's done everything in his power to lighten that load for our employees for the last 20 years. Mike has told me that he's extremely excited to begin a new administrative phase of his career. Mike will be supervising the community outreach as well as professional standards. In closing, I want to make sure I communicate congratulations to you, Mike, as well as your family. And remember to always serve our community and this profession with pride and honor. At this time, Lieutenant Duga will be sworn in as Maplewood's newest police lieutenant.
Sorry. Raise your right hand. I, Michael Dugas, solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Police Lieutenant
of the office of Police Lieutenant
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
I will never betray my badge, my integrity,
I will never betray my badge or integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself
I will always have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable for our actions.
and others accountable for our actions.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Somebody who you'd like to put on your badge.
My youngest, Andrew. I'm going to bend over for him. The chief told me I had to have a speech. I want to thank everybody for this incredible opportunity. I would like to recognize my family, my loving wife Brenda, my son Lucas, my son Andrew, my mom and dad, Jen and Craig, my sister Lynn, and my extended friends and family. I could not have lasted 24 years in public safety without their continued and consistent support. Being a cop's family member is hard, and it hasn't been easy over the past few years. The stress of the job that the officers feel, the family feels too, including the anti-police sentiment that has been with us in the community, or in the nation recently. The constant worry that your loved one may get hurt or be in a critical incident that turns your life upside down. I know I couldn't do that, but we ask all our family members to do it all the time. I want to thank Chief Beardeman for giving me this opportunity and for being a great partner in the last 20 years. Mayor Abrams, for your consistent support and leadership with critical initiatives, including the partnership that brought us the embedded social worker, and the council for your unwavering support. We really appreciate it. I want you to understand that at all levels of the organization. I'd also like to thank Chief Mondor and City Manager Coleman for their continued support, partnership, and mentorship now and throughout my career. Lastly, I'd like to thank Chief Tamala, who isn't here, but he provided me with many opportunities and put me on the leadership track. I look forward to working with our officers, public safety partners, and our non-sworn staff who keep everything running for us. And I look forward to working hard for our officers, ensuring they have the support, training, equipment to keep them healthy and safe. Thank you very much.
At this time, we'll call up Chief Mondor.
Good evening and welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Chief, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me on this exciting night. It's been a long time since we've gotten to do a swearing in. And so Captain Brad Davison has been with the Maplewood Fire Department since 2018. He previously served in Iowa, where he grew up, with the Indianola, Iowa Fire Department as a firefighter, engineer, and paramedic from 2011 to 2018. He earned a bachelor's degree from Simpson College and his master's degree in public administration from American Military University. During his time with the Maplewood Fire Department, Brad has taken on several leadership roles within the department. He's been a member of the department's training committee, strategic planning committee, employee engagement, community outreach and engagement, and he chairs the community outreach and engagement and strategic planning committee for 2021. He also is in charge of our department's communications and social media efforts, and will be focusing on community and employee engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, professional standards, and staffing, recruitment, and retention for the Maplewood Fire Department in his new role. So please join me in welcoming Captain Davison, and we're ready for the swearing in.
Raise your right hand. I, Brad Davison, solemnly swear
I, Brad Davison, solemnly swear
to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that of the State of Minnesota,
that of the State of Minnesota,
all ordinances in the City of Maplewood,
all ordinances in the City of Maplewood,
and the policies and procedures of this department.
and the policies and procedures of this department.
I will seek to give only
I will seek to give only
the highest example
the highest example,
of honesty, integrity, and good citizenship.
honesty, integrity, and good citizenship.
I understand my behavior
I understand my behavior
on and off duty
on and off duty
affects the reputation of all firefighters.
affects the reputation of all firefighters.
I will at all times
I will at all times
uphold the highest standard of the professional firefighter
uphold the highest standard of a professional firefighter
and the proud traditions of the Maplewood Fire Department.
and the proud traditions of the Maplewood Fire Department.
Congratulations.
And now Captain Davison's mother is going to come up and do his pinning. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Manager, and City Council, I would like to thank you, as well as the City of Maplewood's administration, for this opportunity to serve as our administrative captain. It is an honor and a privilege that I do not take lightly. I am grateful for the challenge of this new journey and look forward to what can be accomplished through this position. I want to thank God, my wife Kayla, my family, and my friends for the support, love, and encouragement throughout my professional development journey. Pursuing promotion requires sacrifice, dedication, and grit, usually far more from the spouse than from the employee. So I want to take an extra second to thank my wife for all of the work and sacrifice she has made to see me reach my goals. Thank you. So Mayor, City Manager, and City Council, thank you for your time and for recognizing my promotion.
We're going to do some pictures. If the two candidates would come up with the council. Don't we have the best public safety department?
Yeah, I know.
We're pausing for just a moment while all the candidates and their families go have cake and celebrate, enjoy. And meanwhile, we're going to conduct business of the city.
Yeah, it's too easy. Yeah.
All right. The candidates and their families have left the room, and we are moving on our agenda. Next, we have a presentation from the League of Women Voters. City Manager Coleman, do you want to tee this up for us?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, the League of Women Voters will be sharing the results of their equitable representation study on the appointed city boards and commissions. And it's very timely that you speak to us tonight because we're in the process of appointing new board members to our commissions. So this was a kind of a little primer to think about that. The city, as you are aware, we're really striving to be more intentional in incorporating equity principles and practices in our recruitment, both for our employees and for our commissions and boards. So in an effort to be more truly reflective of the diversity in our community. So I am pleased to introduce Barb Luck and Karen Schaefer of the League of Women Voters.
Good evening, Ms. Luck and Ms. Schaefer. Welcome to the Maplewood City Council meeting. We look forward to your presentation.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for welcoming us this evening. I believe you all received a copy of the study, so we're just going to touch on a few of the highlights tonight. A small team from the Roseville area chapter of the League undertook this study last year. And the purpose, of course, was just to look at the current status of diversity and inclusion on the commissions, and then look at some best practices and get the commissioners' input on what they might suggest. And so first, we want to commend Maplewood for establishing the internal Maplewood Organization for Racial Equity team and the highly active Police Department's Multicultural Advisory Committee, which works with Parks and Rec Commission. This is actually just the kind of thing that our study found would be so helpful to getting more diverse involvement from community and from different diversity. And so those things are great. Also want to thank city staff, Andrea, who shared information with us at the beginning of the study, commissioners' emails and so on. So central to our research was an online confidential survey that had quite a few questions. We really wanted to determine current views, get ideas on what was working well, what could maybe be improved, and just overall perspectives of diversity currently. So we had 116 surveys emailed total, and we had various response rates across the city, across the cities from 19% all the way up to 73%. And Maplewood was actually on the higher end of that, so that was great. Of course. Given the differences in the number of commissions per city and response rates, we actually chose to put together average results just to maintain confidentiality of what's being reported. And probably not a great surprise, the majority of respondents across the cities were primarily male and white commissioners. But some of the findings, just 3 findings from the survey that we'll share tonight that were consistent across all the cities. Commissioners are really proud of their work. They really enjoy the opportunity to contribute, and they generally report that members work well together. And one thing that they said in particular, it's very helpful to have a city liaison person active on the commission. Number 2, commissioners would like more specific training on city policies and procedures, perhaps the strategic plan, as well as things like consensus building and communication. We know this occurs for some commissions. We know that a lot of the training is kind of on the job, and we note that you have a handbook which is provided to new commissioners. Still, it sounds like more onboarding to help people get up to speed and be more effective would be helpful. Number 3, most of the respondents indicated they would like to see more diversity of voices contributing to their work. At the same time, they recognize the difficulty of finding and supporting, reaching out to them, to a broader range of the population. Just one example, we learned that 64% of current commissioners heard of their vacancy through the city website or newsletter. So this suggests the need to perhaps reach out differently, outreach such as happening with the park events, for example, getting to know people beforehand, getting them comfortable with being able to ask questions informally and so on. The main message we want to leave you with tonight is that we are willing to assist in any way that we can. We actually have a program, a follow-up program to our study planned for November 16th. It will feature the U of M Extension Services, which is offering inclusion, training, and leadership development for both nonprofits and cities. They're working with quite a few cities across Minnesota. So, and that information will be found on our website or on the Ramsey County Library as well. But as you consider if there's anything helpful in our study, just know that we'll be happy to continue to share ideas and continue to support your efforts. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any comments or questions? Councilmember Juniman.
A comment. Thank you, ladies, for coming, and thank you for the timely study. And everyone should know that Barb Luck is a Maplewood resident, so we were well represented. But I do think I told Barb this on the phone too, this is a really well put together study. Was really easy for us to get to the point and see what you were after and give us some solutions that we could try. I really applaud you for putting it together this way. Anything longer and more complicated, I'm sure most people up here will attest, might get the, what I call, brief review. This, you can sit down and read it. You know what was in it, and you know when you can go back to it. So I appreciate your really hard work. And please pass that on to the other members of your committee. And thank you for coming to present it. I know people have better things to do on Monday night than entertain us, but it was well placed. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. Councilmember Villavicencio.
I just want to also thank you for coming. I always appreciate the meeting and everything you all do. I just want to note that if anybody is looking at the study at home, I noticed that it doesn't include our MAC commission. I was looking at this, the list of commissions, and am I wrong on that?
She
City
acknowledged
Manager
it.
Coleman.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
No, can I explain? Sure. Okay. Barb and I talked about this on the phone. They actually did most of their research before they knew this existed. And they're not really commissions, but they do know that it exists and it's very valuable. But it didn't qualify as a commission, and they were pretty much done with their study when they found out about it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? I just want to say thank you. And a follow-up question, you indicated that there is follow-up to this study and assistance with the University of Minnesota Extension Program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Who would actually be participating from the city? Is that something staff go to? Is that something that a council member could go to?
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, the November 16th program is a program oriented to nonprofits and government, but it's open to the public.
Okay.
And it will be on the Zoom platform hosted by Ramsey County Library. And as you well know, they do a great job. So it would be any council member, I think, would be interested, and other community leaders who have a similar interest to yours in increasing the diversity on the municipal commissions.
That might be something we want to get out to our commissions so that they could participate as well. Can we make sure that we do that? And what time is it on Zoom on November 16th? Do you know? I don't mean to put, I'm sure it's on your website. What?
A lot of the programs start at 6:30 or 7.
Yes, yeah, 6. I'm going to bet 6:30, but you should check. It's usually they're 6:30 to 8.
Okay, so check the website, but it sounds like a very engaging program. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your efforts. And I have to say, too, that since I've been involved on the council since 2014, I know that you did a study concerning homelessness that was very timely. I'm trying to remember some of the other things, too, that you always bring forward such relevant topics, and you do it ahead of time. It's almost like you must have a crystal ball or something, and that you're looking at things into the future, which I think for city electeds is a really helpful thing. So thank you very much for all the work that you do. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks.
Mayor?
Councilmember Juniman.
Rebecca had the answer. She said they're women.
Okay, we have, moving on, we have a commissioner reappointments tonight. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. Tonight, the City Council will look at a list of commissioners whose terms will expire on September 30th, and it's a relatively short list this time. The commissioners approved for reappointment will serve another term, with their new term expiring 3 years from the term expiration date. There are 3 commissioners whose terms expire. It's Daryl Henshin has submitted an application indicating a desire to serve on the Housing and Economic Development Commission. Keith Buttleman is resigning from the Environmental and Natural Resource Commission. And we just heard yesterday that today, that Dennis Unger is also resigning from the Housing and Economic Development Commission. So there will be some openings now on those two groups, and we'll be assessing how the candidate pool that we have already fits into that, and if it makes sense to slide them into next week's discussion or next meeting's discussion, we will let you know if that's going to work out. So we do have a resolution that does accept the continuation of service for Darrell Henshin. That's on
Council
page
members,
30.
is there a motion?
Motion to approve the attached resolution for commission reappointment.
Second.
Moved by Knutson, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the attached resolution for commissioner reappointment. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Council members, we are now on to our consent agenda. We have 10 items on our consent agenda tonight. Before I guess we could get a motion and then we can discuss it. I'd like to highlight number 6 and number 8. Councilmember Juniman?
And number 7, please.
And number 7. Going to have a little discussion tonight on those.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Beatty, we need to have a motion first before we do the highlights, right? Is there a motion?
So we leave those 3 out until we've highlighted
Yeah,
them?
highlighted.
Okay.
Highlighted 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, I move the consent agenda items G 1 through 5, 9, and 10.
Second.
Is there any further, or motion by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve consent agenda items G 1 through 5 and 9 and 10, and 6, 7, and 8 are highlighted. We're going to talk about those. We'll deal with them separately. Any further discussion on those items? Hearing none, then let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, or any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And now let's go to G6. This is the discussion, the thing I mentioned at the beginning of the council meeting concerning Representative Fisher. And I know Chief Mondor is here. Can you kind of talk about this a little bit? I know Chief Mondor was instrumental in this as well. He testified down at the legislature, and this really is a game changer. Not only for us and our new fire station, but for fire stations or public safety departments all over the state. So it really is a very big thing. Chief Mondor.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, thank you. When we started having discussions about building the North Fire Station, we had approached the legislature looking for special legislation to exempt the purchases of materials from sales tax. And after 2 sessions and getting kind of bounced around to different committee hearings and strong work from Mayor Abrams and staff, we were able to get special legislation previous to June 30th. So all of our project, anything that was purchased prior to June 30th, the city of Maplewood received special legislation to exempt those materials from taxes. Part of the efforts also led to a statewide sales tax exemption on all public safety facilities and some other government projects. So this project is, as you alluded to earlier, could save up to $500,000 in savings that will not be the burden of Maplewood taxpayers via bonding, but also have paved the groundwork for future public safety facilities throughout the state of Minnesota.
Thank you very much. It's really a big lift by our legislators and by our staff for really seeing to it that this happened. So the next item highlighted is reciprocal emergency services agreement between Vadnais Heights and the city of Maplewood. Chief Mondor, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Juniman, did you want to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I wanted to thank all the staff, and I wanted to thank you for the hours you put into this. This was not some kind of a magic wand. And you had to have people like him who they listen to, but you have to have people like you out front saying, listen to him. So
And that's about what I did.
I thank you.
He had all the information, and I just said,
thank you for
listen.
taking the time and doing the same thing, and I thank any other staff who helped him, because this is monumental for lots of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the reciprocal emergency services agreement between Vadnais Heights and the city of Maplewood. That's yours, too.
Yes, Mayor and Council. Mutual aid can be confusing because we have several layers of mutual aid. And so we can't staff for every exigency, every type of crisis that the community may face. And our neighbors rely on us, and we rely on our neighbors to come in for certain types of incidents. And so what you have before you is a reciprocal emergency services agreement. In our terms would be automatic aid between the city of Maplewood and the city of Vadnais Heights. So for certain call types in this agreement, structure fire or building fire, rather than a Vadnais Heights chief officer to have to say, hey, I need help from Maplewood, the dispatch center knows structure fire, this part of Vadnais Heights, automatically send an engine from Maplewood. So we receive the same in return. We have predetermined areas based on, we have several surrounding communities, and now Vadnais Heights will come into the northwest portion of Maplewood, and we'll go into the southeast portion of Vadnais Heights for those high-risk, low-frequency events such as building fires.
Thank you very much for that explanation. An important partnership to make this work better for all of our residents. So thank you for that. And the last item, this is actually Ms. Robbins, concerning the resolution accepting a DNR shade tree bonding grant to the tune of $45,000, which is wonderful. Ms. Robbins.
Yes, this grant kind of piggybacks on the grant we received last year that we'll be wrapping up, and this one is for 2021 through 2024. And it worked out that we were able to overlap them and continue on. And our first EAB grant will wrap up next year, and the only thing left to do is to inspect the trees that were planted last year. And what's really nice about this grant is it addresses underserved areas in the city that may not have trees. So what's going to happen is this year, as part of this grant, if we choose to accept it, we will be identifying those underserved areas where trees could be planted. And so if people don't want to replace their boulevard trees as part of the grant, instead of just giving those trees back, we will take those trees and plant those in those areas. So staff will be going out and finding out places to put them so no tree will go to waste, and up to 150 trees will be planted with this grant. So it's really a next step in making sure we're serving the whole area of Maplewood.
Thank you very much for that. Great report, thanks. Do we have a motion for items G, 6, 7, and 8? Moved by
I firmly move consent agendas 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. Consent agenda items 6, 7, and 8. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
That last one's really exciting.
Okay, we have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. We move on to new business. The first item is the issuance and sale of general obligation refunding bonds. Ms. Paulseth, this is yours tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, Council. Occasionally, the market provides an opportunity for the city to save interest costs on its existing debt and debt service payments, and that is what we're here to talk about tonight. The city has issued some debt in 2012, 2013, and 2014 that is currently ready to be called, reaching the call date, I should say, and is eligible for refunding. So many of you have been through this time and time again. But for those of you who haven't, a refunding is very similar to when you refinance your home when there's a lower interest rate. So there's a considerable amount of savings to be realized by refunding these bonds. Our municipal advisors from Ellers watch these issues for us very closely as they are nearing the call date, and they make some preliminary calculations and determine when the right time to refund the bonds would be. So tonight, We have Bruce Kimmel from Ellers with us, who is our municipal advisor, and he is going to present the pre-sale report. You do have a report in your packet, and you have a separate printed report on the dais in front of you. So, Madam Mayor, at this time, I would ask if you could recognize Mr. Kimmel.
Mr. Kimmel, would you join us up at the dais? Welcome to the City Council meeting.
Thank you. And Mayor and council members, I have to say it's really nice to be back in front of you in person. I think I've been on more than a few Zoom calls with you over the last 18 months.
Yes.
So as Ms. Paulseth mentioned, this is a really exciting opportunity for the city to save on its future interest expense as it relates to these three financings. And I just wanted to hit a couple of the highlights from that pre-sale report that Ms. Paulseth mentioned. So in case you're wondering, the bonds that we'll be refinancing are the city's 2012A, 2013A, and 2014A bonds. And you can see that we've added up the amounts of the proportions of the par amount of the new bonds by each of those three existing bond issues. The interest rates on the existing bonds range from just over 2% up to 4%, and as you'll see in a little bit, the projected interest rates are quite a bit lower than that in today's rate environment. And so as a result of those lower interest rates, we're estimating that we should be able to save the city, working with the city, in excess of $800,000, and that's net of all issuance costs. So it's truly an apples-to-apples comparison of the old debt service to the new debt service. In addition, if you present value back those future savings to today's dollars, it's approximately $785,000 of savings to the city in terms of present value. There's quite a few authorities that are involved with this issue, and they're not so relevant because, again, we're just refinancing, we're not adding new money. But I would point out also that the new bonds will go out for about 13 years, and you will have another refunding opportunity in 2030. So who knows if there'll still be this kind of rate environment in 9 or I guess 8 years now. But there is the option to either prepay or to pay off or to refinance these bonds. We've talked quite a bit with Bond Counsel about making sure that these bonds will be bank qualified. As you may recall, bank qualification allows for a slightly better interest rate than just plain tax-exempt bonds. And we talked through very carefully the effect of your financing earlier this year for the fire station, and we've confirmed that these refunding bonds will be deemed bank qualified. So that's great for the city. In addition, some of you may recall that your existing general obligation debt is rated AA+ with S&P. We'll be talking with S&P again for this bond issue, and I have no concerns or qualms about your ability to get that AA+ affirmed by S&P. Let's see, I just wanted to cover a couple other things. One thing I would note is premium pricing. In the current interest rate environment, because yields are so low, a lot of investors want bonds with higher coupon or face value interest rates on them, and they're willing to pay you more than $1 essentially for each dollar of city bonds in order to have those higher coupon rates, even though the actual yields that those investors are earning is less. And so it's kind of strange psychology, but we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that element in the market and allowing for premium pricing. But we also need to make sure that the final structure of the refunding conforms with some of the other provisions that we need to pay attention to. And so we've already been working with Bond Counsel again to make sure that we're anticipating a premium pricing structure. And if we get more premium than we're estimating, we'll just reduce the size of the bonds further because we know exactly what we need to borrow in order to refinance the existing debt. And then, unless you really want me to, I'm not going to talk about continuing disclosure and arbitrage monitoring. I know those are really exciting topics, but you're in great shape on both of those fronts. Ms. Paulseth and her team do an awesome job of managing the city's debt, and so it's very easy to keep track of those obligations and requirements. Just touch on the debt issuance schedule. So we're here today for the pre-sale review. We expect to work on several key items the week of October 11th, including the due diligence call, distributing the official statement to the market, and we already have the conference call with S&P set up for October 14th. Then we'll look to sell the bonds and come back to you on the night of October 25th, and then close those bonds in the middle of November, at which time the city will hold on to the proceeds for about 2.5 months before being able to redeem the existing bonds in February of 2022. So then finally, I just wanted to show you, I won't show you all of the detail here. You can see there's a lot of sources if you look at the sources and uses of table. And this is just so, again, Ms. Paulseth and her team can keep track of which part of the refunding bonds has to be paid with special assessments or levy dollars. But what I really want to show you is 2 pages ahead, the debt service comparison, if you want to see that page. And this is where we really focus in order to see, okay, does it make sense to do a refunding or not, right? Because we don't want to waste your time going out to the market if it looks like it's going to be pretty paltry savings. But here, if you look on the right-hand column, you can see just the kind of magnitude of savings we are anticipating with the current market. And you can see that with our estimates, we're thinking that the city will save close to $100,000 per year initially, and then they'll sort of bobble back in the 90s and 80,000 range, and then trickle down as the amount of debt trickles down. But still, in total, again, you're looking at about $820,000 of net savings. Also, one last thing, a benchmark that we often look at with refundings to see if it is viable and if it makes sense to take city time and energy is making sure there's at least 3% present value savings on a refunding. And if you look at the net present value benefit as compared to the refunded principal, you can see that we're about 9% savings. So we're actually about 3 times the rule of thumb for a viable refunding. So that makes us feel good that this is really the right time to be hitting the market and taking advantage of consolidating these 3 bond issues into one. Do any of you have any questions for me about the refunding or how the bond sale will work? Any of those elements?
Council members, any questions? I don't see any questions. It just seems to me that this is really good management of our city funds, and I really appreciate Ms. Paulseth and her team for working through this with you. So we have no questions. Council members, is there a motion to adopt the resolution? I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2021B, to be issued in the proposed aggregate principal amount of $8,275,000.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman. The motion to adopt the resolution providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation refunding bonds as stated. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, council members, then let's take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Kimmel. The next agenda item is the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and Slopes and Bluffs Ordinance. This was actually pretty interesting reading, Ms. Finwall. And I still want to know, what is the toe? I kept thinking that that was some kind of a typo, but...
Slopes have toes.
Yeah, I did not know that, but I learned that from reading this. So, Ms. Finwall, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the commission, or council, I beg your pardon. I presented this to the Planning Commission last week, so sometimes you forget what meeting you're at. But tonight, we are here with the City Council, and we will be presenting the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area and our Slopes and Bluffs Ordinance. And I do have a short presentation for you because it was a lot of reading, and please feel free to stop me with questions. So for a little background for you, the Maplewood MRCCA, which is the acronym, and Slopes Ordinance, we feel were adopted probably in the 1970s. During the original rulemaking for the MRCCA. And then on January 4th of 2017, the state did adopt new MRCCA rules. So now local governments are required to update ordinances based on those new rules. The deadline for Maplewood's review is October 1st of 2021. We were notified by the DNR a year ago, and then they give local governments 1 year in which to update the ordinance. So Maplewood's MRCCA is relatively small compared to the overall corridor, which goes all the way up to Roberts and down to Hastings or Prescott, something like that. And it's about 145 acres, and it encompasses, of course, Fish Creek, the open space site there, as well as Ramsey County open space. It's south of Carver Avenue and west of 494. There are 35 single-family households that are located within that corridor, as well as the open space sites. The timeline here, we have been working on this, our Environmental and Natural Resources Commission, as well as the Planning Commission. We started again last October. You can see, go through the timeline there, that the Environmental Commission first took on the MRCCA. Then we realized that, we have a slopes ordinance that might affect both MRCCA and overall city. So we should really look at that and make sure that that ordinance is consistent as well. We did some education and outreach in the summer. We particularly sent notice to the 35 households of the ordinance, and did you know you're in the MRCCA, and here's how this new ordinance might affect you, and I'll go into that momentarily. I did not hear back from any of the residents with any questions or concerns, so I think the way the ordinance is written helps protect their homes to maintain them in a livable fashion. Then the Environmental Commission recommended final approval in August. We brought it to the Planning Commission for a preliminary review, and then the public hearing, which was a requirement of that statute, and that was held last Tuesday. And the Planning Commission and Environmental Commission did recommend approval of the ordinances. And so now, tonight, we are here for your final approval. And then after that, we do have to submit it for the DNR's final approval by October 1st. Just around the corner. So to help cities out, the DNR did draft a model ordinance that we could use. But of course, in Maplewood, we're probably the only MRCCA area that doesn't have riverfront. So a lot of the ordinance didn't really apply to us. So it was quite a process to whittle away, what was needed and what wasn't needed. So, but the ordinance that we have adopted, is now like 5 pages, something like that. Our previous ordinance was maybe 2 paragraphs. So it's a lot more comprehensive. And it does cover development and vegetative management within that corridor. So the purpose of the MRCCA is, of course, regulations for land within the district. It has to be consistent with the state rules. It does establish standards that protect primary conservation areas and public river corridor views from development impacts. And this view here that goes across the river to St. Paul is actually on the top of the Fish Creek trail there. So we get some nice views from our corridor. It established standards that sustain and enhance the biological and ecological functions of vegetation and preserve the natural character and topography of the district. And it also is in place to maintain stability of bluffs and steep slopes. And so the ordinance, as I stated, is quite comprehensive, but I wanted to narrow in for you how this might affect our single-family homes, because, of course, the remainder of the land is all publicly owned and might not be impacted as much. So in the new MRCCA, principal and accessory structure setbacks to the bluffs, and they do supply us with a bluff map, and a bluff, is defined as a slope that's at least 18% or greater, and it has to be at least 25 feet high. So there are areas in the MRCCA where we actually have bluffs. And the new standards are a 100-foot setback, and the current ordinance requires a 40-foot setback. So I did an analysis of those 35 homes, and it appears that about 18 of them are constructed closer to the bluff than the new ordinance would allow. But we'll get into how that affects them. So In addition to that setback, you can also have averaging of setbacks, similar to what we see in our zoning ordinance for front yard setbacks. So if there's a house that was built years ago and it's, maybe 50 feet back, and then there's a house that was like 30 feet forward, you can put your house, if you're the lot in between, in the middle somewhere. So it's that averaging, and that's allowed on the bluffs. And then there's an allowance for an encroachment if it's an accessory structure under 200 square feet, and that's a shed that wouldn't require a building permit. And decks, they're also allowed to encroach a little further into that setback. And then now this is something new. The city will have to manage vegetation removal permits, but we can call it anything we want, and we already do something like that now. It's called a grading permit. So this won't be anything really different, but if a homeowner did what's called intensive vegetation clearing, which is a large tract removal of trees, and I doubt that we'd see something like that on those residential properties, but if they did, they'd have to get this vegetation removal permit. And then now we are talking about the non-conformities. So the homes, the 18 homes that I mentioned that are closer to the bluff than allowed, well, they can remain, because of course our non-conforming ordinance does allow that for any pre-existing non-conforming use. So that's within that ordinance. And then all legally established non-conforming structures can expand laterally as long as they don't get closer to the bluff than they currently are. And that's something that's not in our ordinance, so that gives those homeowners some flexibility there. And we also have that written in our wetland ordinance for like when if a house is built closer to the wetland than the code allows, they can build laterally as long as they don't encroach further. So on the MRCCA ordinance, of course, we were required to get the DNR to do a review, and they sent us a letter, which was included in your packet. It's a preliminary approval, and they only had 2 comments. One was an amendment to the bluff and bluff impact definitions. We had to make it longer, so it was just a minor slip up there. And then add a section on water quality impact zones, and that has to do with stormwater and directing it away from drainage areas. And it was a little confusing because, of course, we already have our wetland ordinance that has the buffers, so I wasn't quite sure if that was needed, but they called that out, and so those 2 items were added into the ordinance that you're seeing tonight. And then the Friends of Mississippi River, they have been following local governments and their ordinance writing for the new rules. Of course, they're in place to help protect the Mississippi, which is a national park, this corridor. And they actually came to the Environmental Commission and gave a very interesting presentation. And then they were at the public hearing as well. But they sent a letter, which is included in your packet, and they have reviewed the ordinance and were quite pleased with it. They said we went over and above on some of the conditions, which they outlined, and then 2 items that they thought we should look at. One was expanding the bird-safe lighting requirements, and I know in your packet that the City of Maplewood has a lighting ordinance which already addresses that, to have the direct lighting downward rather than up, the dark sky. City of Maplewood was probably one of the first local governments to have such an ordinance. So that's citywide. So we really didn't have to add something like that in this ordinance. And then require vegetation restoration be prepared by a qualified individual with demonstrable experience and knowledge related to management of natural areas, such as natural resource manager or ecologist. And the DNR model ordinance just said require vegetation restoration plan be prepared. And the reasoning for that is they have found that these qualified individuals, you have better success with the restoration than hiring, but a lawn service company, something like that. So we also have something like that in our wetland ordinance when you're restoring, that it should be by a qualified individual. So it's nothing out of the norm, and we did add that in the ordinance as well. So that was the MRCCA. Now we'll move on to the slopes. And we named it Slopes and Bluffs because we're not sure if there's bluffs anywhere else in the city. You know, we haven't done a thorough study. There are some very steep slopes in other areas. I can think of one example. It's Beaver Creek, kind of that ravine. Years ago, we took the Environmental Commission on a slope tour, right? Doesn't that sound exciting? And we looked at that area in particular, and there were, you know, some garages built like right up to the edge of those slopes. So that's back when we were starting to take a look at this ordinance, never got around to it, so now we've wrapped that up. But this does cover regulations for steep slopes, so it's throughout the city, not just the MRCCA area. And we wanted to make sure it was consistent with the MRCCA ordinance. Of course, it's in place to maintain slope stability, protect downstream water bodies from sedimentation, preserve native plant and wildlife communities, preserve natural topography, maintain existing drainage patterns, and preserve historical and scenic significance through regulations for setbacks, stormwater, and vegetation management and erosion control. So here's a good example of this picture of, you know, why we're regulating slopes. You know, we don't want to see something like that in Maplewood. So again, I wanted to narrow in on how's this going to affect single-family homes. And this, of course, is a naturally occurring slope. It doesn't have to do with a development that might put in a rain garden that's, you know, has a steep slope or something. So it's all naturally occurring slopes. So for single-family homes, the structure placement for the principal and accessory structures, decks, and facilities is how the DNR terms it, near bluffs and steep slopes, we call out a 40-foot setback. And currently in our slope ordinance, we don't have a setback. So, you know, we discussed this with the DNR on their thoughts about this provision and, of course, our Public Works Director and engineers. And they said, you know, first you want to determine why are you requiring such a setback? Is it to protect the slope, or is it for the view shed? You know, looking up at the slope and seeing a house right there. And we decided it's for both. You know, really. So that 40-foot came from the old MRCCA, so we thought that was a good standard to begin with. And implement into this slope ordinance. And it does have those non-conforming regulations in there as well. So if there is a legal non-conforming, like that garage that I mentioned on our slope tour, they could build laterally, but, you know, the big concern, we'd want to make sure, of course, we're getting a building permit, grading permit, ensure that that slope is adequate to build on. But, you know, you always want to make sure that those existing homes have some flexibility to stay in their home and make it a livable home for themselves. So that's how that was addressed. And so with that, we bring you 4 giant motions. One is to adopt the overall MRCCA ordinance. And since that is rather large, we've summed that up in a summary ordinance. And then the third is to adopt the overall slope ordinance, and then we've summed that up into a summary ordinance. So thank you for your time, and I stand for questions.
Okay, council members, are there any questions? Councilmember Juniman.
No, Mayor, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. If anyone ever wondered why we would need such a person as an environmental planner who would do things like these kinds of ordinances, it's in front of you. And since long before she had that position, I have to say, Sean is what I used to call the ordinance nerd, because nobody can go over an ordinance and whip it into shape like Sean does. She is extraordinarily good at this. So I am highly reliant that this is done exactly the way it needs to be. And it does show you that the variety of lifestyles in our community is much vaster than many places. I mean, I'm defy you to find anywhere in Roseville where they have to deal with something like this. It's just, I mean, you know, people don't even think that where these houses occur that this could be any issue. So it's a lot to keep track of and watch over. So thank you for your diligence, Sean. Personally, it would bore me to tears, but I'm glad you can do this.
We do appreciate the work.
So thank you. I'd also like to mention that our city clerk's office they are instrumental in reviewing these with a fine-tooth comb. You know, I think I have it down pat, and then Andrea, the eagle eye, you know, catches something. So I want to thank you for that.
Much appreciated. Okay, council members, we have 4 motions. They're on page 233 of 295. Does someone want to make the first motion?
I move to approve the ordinance repealing the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Ordinance and creating a new MRCCA ordinance.
Second.
And seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the ordinance repealing the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Ordinance and creating a new MRCCA ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Second motion.
I further move to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the MRCCA ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of MRCCA ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
I
third
further
one.
move to approve the ordinance repealing the slopes and erosion control ordinance and creating a new slopes and bluffs ordinance.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the ordinance repealing the slopes and erosion control ordinance and creating a new slopes and bluffs ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Last but not least, I move to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the slopes and bluffs ordinance by title and summary.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the resolution authorizing publication of the slopes and bluffs ordinance by title and summary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Or any nays? Motion passes. All 4 of them passed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
And it should be pretty easy for who made the motion and who seconded. It was the same on all 4. Just checking with that. Yeah, ditto. We have one last agenda item, and it is our city manager annual performance evaluation. And Ms. Paulseth, you are going to present on this. I had to look. Mr. Sable has taken a job with the city of Bloomington as an assistant city manager, and we are sorry to see him leave, but we're also happy for him. So, Ms. Paulseth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you mentioned, this report was prepared by Mr. Sable before he left the city. So tonight, there are 3 things that the council will need to be aware of. You have the authority to close your regular meeting under the statutes to discuss the city manager's performance evaluation. At the conclusion of that meeting, you will come back into session, and at that point, you must summarize the conclusions of the city manager performance evaluation. And then at that point, you may then consider the 4th amendment to the city manager employment agreement. So, Madam Mayor, I believe it's appropriate at this point for you to consider to close the regular meeting to discuss the performance.
Okay, thank you. I am going to make a motion to close the regular meeting of the council meeting pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3A, for the purpose of evaluating the performance of City Manager Melinda Coleman.
Second.
Moved by Abram, seconded by Juniman. The motion to close, go into a closed session for the purpose of evaluating the performance of City Manager Melinda Coleman. So with that, we are going to go into closed session. Let's go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Okay, we are returning from closed session. We closed pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3A. And it is my honor to summarize the discussion that we had with City Manager Coleman in closed session. The staff, the department heads, and the city council contributed to a performance evaluation for our city manager. And I'll read the criteria. These are the following criteria: accountability, effective communicator, attitude, problem solving, professionalism and attention to detail, involvement, customer focus, change management and communications, resource management, performance management, integrity, cooperation and teamwork, and diversity. Those were the criteria that department heads and the city council were asked to evaluate Ms. Coleman's performance over this past year. And a number of individuals indicated, the staff and city council members offered additional comments to all of those criteria. And I have to say that this is one of the best and well-deserved performance evaluations that I have ever seen, and I have seen an awful lot of those when I practiced law for 37 years. We are very fortunate here in the city of Maplewood to have a talented and dedicated city manager who has excelled. The majority of the criteria by everyone was evaluated as exceeds requirements. And there were a few. The worst evaluation was that she met the requirements, which, you know what, that is really to be, it's an absolutely fabulous performance evaluation. The way that you have led this city and really pivoted during, well, it's now been 20 months that we have been in this pandemic. We didn't know what things were going to be like, and we were making decisions on a day-to-day basis, and Melinda was leading us through that. And she was both compassionate and she was creative. Sometimes there were very hard decisions to make, but we had to make decisions as we learned information. And when we learned additional information, we had to make new decisions. And she was instrumental in that. She is highly respected by department heads and by the city council. And you can see that from some of the comments. Like I said, it's one of the best performance evaluations, filled with all sorts of anecdotes about all of the things that Melinda did over this time period to really help our city and guide our city. And I will tell you this, that we could not have done this without her at the helm. And so we just want to thank you very much for everything that you've done, and we certainly appreciate your leadership, and you are highly respected, we know, in terms of other city administrators and city managers, but we are absolutely blessed to have you here at the helm in the city of Maplewood. And so we just thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, council members, we have a motion. There is a fourth amendment to the city manager employment agreement. I'm going to make that motion to approve the fourth amendment to the city manager employment agreement and authorize the mayor and finance director to execute said agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
Okay, moved by Abrams, seconded, it was a tie. I know, okay, I'm going to go with Juniman because she's the most senior, sorry. Even though Councilmember Knutson was on the evaluation committee too. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Council members, do you want to say anything?
Said it all.
Okay.
She's the best, and we won't go any further because it'll just get bad. We'll all self-destruct.
This has been a very challenging time, and we have been, we could not have been, had a better leader in our city. So, Councilmember Cave.
I just want to make a comment to all the citizens out there who don't realize how smooth this city has run during a very tumultuous time, and it is due to the head, our city manager here, and how she leads the staff and how the staff have come together. And I came in here during the end part of COVID, and I just want to say I walked into an amazingly well-run establishment. And everyone out there in Maplewood, you're so lucky. You don't realize how smooth this runs because you're not affected on the outside in a negative way. It's been such a positive experience coming back here on the council, and a positive experience to work with the staff and everyone. And if you knew how the inside work, you would just be amazed. So thank you.
Any other points of discussion? Okay, council members, then let's take a vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you again, Melinda. So with that, council members, we are completed with our agenda, and we are adjourned.